our first little presentation of this series that they have put together, and I'm honored to be invited to be the first speaker. And in just a moment, we're going to just go ahead and get going on this. Okay. Welcome everyone who's here. I'm going to say let's go ahead and start. It's about 11:11 now, which is perfect. I didn't even realize when Liza invited me to do this, I was like, oh, that's like my favorite time. My birthday is actually November 11th, 11/11. So this always resonates with me, and I'm very grateful to be able to offer you some of my energy on this beautiful day here in sunny South Florida, and from my parents' back porch where I have closest access to the router and can hopefully have strong signal. My name is Alexander Howe. They call me Bush Ninja. I've got Bush Ninja Botanicals. Here's my little logo sticker for y'all to see. And I create beautiful herbal products, and I largely love to be a teacher to educate people how to gain access to medicine for their own self. I'm a practical herbalist, and that's really what I like to talk about, is practical herbalism. It's like, yeah, I'm going to show you some really neat and like weird things, but I'm going to also show you like very practical things. Oh, good. Someone commented and I can actually see things. Hey, great. Oh, they're just watching. Hi, Anna. Welcome to the feed. Anyway, so I made some notes as I go, so I should have those in front of me. The most important thing, I would say, when you're thinking about putting something like this together, because you're going to assemble it from all these different areas, to realize is that you can have everything you could possibly have in your medicine basket or your formal first aid kit thing, but if you don't have the training to use it, then it doesn't really help you. So the first thing to put in your first aid kit is in your brain. You got to put knowledge in your brain about how to treat and care for wounds and injuries and treat for shock and things like that. So I highly encourage you, if you've never taken a standard first aid course, that's something you should do. If you haven't done, become CPR certified, Red Cross style, that's definitely something to look at. There's levels of training. Wilderness First Responder, WFA, and Wilderness First Aid and Wilderness First Responder are two certifications that you can get that I highly recommend. The First Responder one's actually multiple days long, and you have like scenarios you have to go through, and that's pretty exciting. So training and educating yourself how these things work is really, really important, because you'll be better able to treat wounds. And I hear as I travel and I encounter people, stories of them kind of, spouting old wisdoms and wives' tales and things that you should do for wounds. And I won't go into too many specifics about the things that you hear about, because I don't want to put out false information even to tell not to do it. But you want to make sure that you actually have a background in how to properly treat and care for a wound, and how to clean it and prevent infection and things like that. And so there are resources as well. You should certainly go to those trainings, but there's a couple of really good resources that I've encountered on my journeys that I really like, and two books that are really good. And so for you all who are taking notes on this is a really good resource. One of them that is kind of renowned is a book called Where There Is No Doctor. And so this is so much of our work, and here especially, I'm broadcasting from the USA. You're never that far from a hospital, and even it's not impossible to get a helicopter to you if you're in the wild and this is a thing you need. Granted, you'll lose an arm and a leg just from the insurance costs, but at least you'll keep your arm and a leg if you fell down a cliff. Who knows? But so sometimes, though, you're in a situation where it's a wilderness situation and you are not expecting to be able to get to the doctor. So there's a book called Where There Is No Doctor, and that's got a lot of really good techniques, trainings, strategies in it. It was written by David Werner. So David Werner, Where There Is No Doctor. There was a sequel, Where There Is No Dentist, as well, because tooth stuff can lay you out just as well if anybody's had a bad tooth infection. And then, I mean, realize it's an infection in your head, so teeth can kill you. You know, you're a tooth infection, a bad thing. And even if it doesn't kill you, you'll certainly maybe feel like you're gonna die. There's another book called The Herbal Medic by Sam Kaufman. Now, that book is a really beautiful synergy between, like, again, it's kind of more from a paramedic-y kind of view, but also has herbalism integrated into it. So I nerd out and geek out on technical stuff and the fusion of what we learn through our Western science and medicine and things we've discovered chemistry-wise and all these new informational things that we're learning. And I love when that fuses with the ancestral knowledge that we've had, because people have survived on this planet for 200,000 years before any of this stuff was invented, before we even knew about bacteria or germs or anything like that. And so everybody, welcome again. Those of you who are just tuning in, this is Creating Your Herbal First Aid Kit, but that title isn't exactly accurate. We're going to do a comprehensive first aid kit that has the herbal stuff in it, but also we're going to talk about some of the other things that you really obviously ought to have in any first aid kit and have access to. So the first thing that you want to think about or consider when you're putting together your first aid kit is the scale at which you're potentially treating people. Now, if you're like, we're going to talk about the small end of the scale. We're going to talk about my experiences, because that's really what I have, really the ability to talk about, is I've traveled with a backpack for many, many years, about 5 years total on the ground all throughout southern Africa over a period of like 7-8 years. I went back and forth. And so, you know, I wasn't carrying a tackle box filled with medicine stuff, but I also wasn't going to an event where I was treating personally the medic for, you know, dozens or many more people. So you scaling the size of your container to meet your needs. If you don't go into the wilderness very often, and you're going to essentially be car camping in nature, so even if you're going to a festival, you've generally got access to your car and to your stuff. And so that means your kit can be a little bit bigger. Maybe you're out and you've got a group of friends, so you potentially need to treat, you know, 4 or 5 people throughout a weekend or a time. So you think about the number of people you're going to treat, you think about how long you might need to treat them, so a weekend, you know, festival or a week-long camping trip. You know, if someone gets a wound and you have to treat the wound, you need to be able to change the bandages and things more than one time. You may need to have, someone gets tummy upset and gets food poisoning, you may need to have more than one of a medicine that we're going to talk about when we get to that section. So scale your container to meet your needs. And so I had one on my backpack. Now, since I've returned home to America and I'm no longer traveling, these things became disassembled. I wish I could just like plop down in front of you the one that I had while I was traveling that was very tuned in. But it's also really, it was a beautiful thing to be like intimately integrated into my first aid kit, because I knew where everything was and I could practically find it in the dark, as it were. It's just like I knew where everything goes, and like and it has a spot and it lives in that spot, and that was really neat to be able to go. Now, as I traveled though, I was working and practicing as a traditional healer. That was a title that I was allowed to claim for myself. And so in southern Africa, there are many kinds of traditional healer titles, people who have initiated into certain traditions. And I was always very careful because I have not initiated into the formal traditions. So folks would call me a Sangoma, and I'm not a Sangoma, which is a type of a spiritual shaman medicine person. And there's also an Inyanga, and I'm not an Inyanga because I haven't trained or initiated, but I resonate more with their traditions because they have a stronger herbalism kind of aspect. But I am allowed to call myself a traditional healer, and I even say I have access to other traditions because much of my training was from Western herbalism. And then as I walked and I traveled and I learned about these African plants, and so now I have a beautiful niche market of expression because I'm talking about these plants from southern Africa that are, you know, medicines that we co-evolved alongside with. And so as the human species and as all the different Homo species, you know, evolved over time on the continent of Africa, which is our ancestral home, you know, we did so along with these plants around us. And so our bodies have, you know, receptors and processes that integrate with these phytochemicals, these plant medicines. And then as we moved around the world, our ancestors discovered, you know, most of these medicines, many of which have been forgotten now, and we are only just relearning, or we're learning that, oh, look, there's something that our ancestors spoke about. Here's some science that shows that it's true. So I love when that happens. So your container, nowadays, I've got this, you know, basket that I keep a lot of my stuff in, and that carries pretty well. It also has like a neat capability that I can like have another, it's almost like another storage unit on top here. But if you, a good small thing is a toolbox or a fishing tackle box. You want something that is tough and resilient, potentially, ideally even waterproof, though my basket's not waterproof, because it's, you know, say it rains, you know, where you're out, and you take the first aid kit out, and you want it always somewhere very accessible. If you're at your campsite, you know, don't have it buried in the car. Take it out and have it be obvious and accessible. And so you may just need, if you're a solo backpacker or you're traveling with just you and one other person, you don't need this giant kit to lug. And if you're traveling, if you're walking and moving, then you don't want to carry, you know, weight as a concern. So if you've got, you know, just a small thing, this is like the one I throw in my backpack if I'm traveling and walking around. You know, this is what I use nowadays. And these you can get, it doesn't matter the brand as much, but it's just the container I'm talking about. Also, what works really well is a toiletry kit. You know, because the toiletry kits have little slots and rubbers and elastics for bottles to get stuck in, and they're made to hold the little containers of things that we might have, like tinctures and salves and things. And so, apologize for ambient noise. I've got neighbors with ATVs and things, but we're going to do the best we can. So, you've got your container, and you know you're starting to stock, you know, what you're going to put into it. And we're going to talk about some of the things that may seem obvious that, you know, you'll have, and it can always be good to buy a first aid kit that's standard, and then you get some of these basic things, and then to expand upon that with the things that you're going to add. But so you're going to have basically, you know, bandages are really important, sterile gauze, alcohol wipes. I'll talk more about the tools that we should all have in our first aid kits. But you want to, as I traveled, I realized that even though I was working as a traditional healer and as an herbalist, I could not treat long-term conditions. So I didn't go out thinking that I was going to have this purpose in life. I just went out, and I was always very excited to be prepared. Eagle Scout, Boy Scout kind of, you know, made me happy to be able to help someone in need that I couldn't otherwise help because I had the right thing. And some things you carry and you hope you never use. I carried a CPR mask for 5 years all throughout southern Africa because if I've encountered somebody who I needed to give CPR to, I wanted that protection for myself and to not second guess the fact that I might, you know, put my mouth to this person. And that was before we were dealing with this current situation where, you know, communicable disease is, you know, so critically important to consider. And so I never used it. I'm so grateful that I never used the CPR mask, but I'm glad that I had it either way, and I carried that, you know, cumulatively over time. I also realized, though, that I would carry little tincture bottles of different things, and even if it was really specific for a certain thing, and there was a couple of times that I treated that thing and it was really good for that, but then I realized that I was carrying this little bottle and I only used it like 3 times in a couple of years, and it was like, wow, the cumulative weight of this little glass bottle might as well have been a rock, and carrying rocks around down your back is, you know, very heavy over time. And so you want to have discernment, especially if you're doing a traveler's first aid kit, because weight is a commodity, essentially. You know, you only have so much you can carry. So the things that we're going to put, let's get to the point of all this. What are you going to put in your first aid kit? You've got all the basic stuff. We're going to talk a little bit about tools that you might not think of having at the end, but, you know, when you buy your basic first aid kit, and you've got your gauze, you've got your gloves, and I guess I'll just talk about gloves right now, the thing about gloves, there's the obvious reason we wear gloves, and you want to, when you have your first aid kit, you want to know exactly where those are, because you're going to grab those pretty much first if there's any blood, which, if you're dealing with a wound or an injury, you want to definitely have your gloves. But by putting on the gloves, it gives this aura of credibility to the people around you. So there was a time I was at a festival in Mozambique, and it was for an endangered tree called the sneezewood tree, and it was also a dance and musical competition, because these local tribes had this beautiful tradition of, instead of going to war with each other, they would have battle of the bands, and they would have dance-offs. Instead of fighting, they had a whole orchestral war of these musical instruments that kind of look like a marimba. It's called a timbila. And, people were drinking, and this guy came, and he, was drunk, and he went through the crowd with a truck, and he actually clipped a little boy. And I ran over. I had my first aid kit. It had actually a big red cross on it at the time, so that was really obvious. I put on my gloves, and everybody around me, even though, I'm not a doctor. Also, I guess I should say everything that I say now is for educational and entertainment purposes only, because I do live in America. But I was certainly the most highly trained and qualified person there, and I had my kit, and I was able to, and people they listened to what I told them I needed when I was directing people around me and treating the child for shock and for injury. And I learned in that instance that it was the gloves, in addition to protecting me, actually were that extra thing. So people know that you at least have that much training behind you when you have the proper protective equipment. So that's really important. And so in that situation, so I was to say, I don't carry in my first aid kit things that I need for long-term treatment. If I would meet somebody and they were diabetic, or they had rheumatoid arthritis, or they had some kind of long-term condition, I could talk to them about the things they could take and the behaviors they could change, but I couldn't carry the medicine enough to treat their condition. So this kit specifically is short-term, and that means injury of some kind. So we're going to talk about wounds and wound treatment. It means sickness and disease that's short-term, so everything from colds and flus to viruses that we're catching and things like that. Different afflictions of maybe food poisoning, that's a short-term thing, or maybe constipation because you had a really good time and now you're all blocked up from eating all this bad food and taking things that maybe blocked you up. And I've definitely, laxatives are a thing that I include. An herbal, I have a really great plant medicine laxative, and that's an important thing to consider. So pain, everything from headaches and migraines and short-term pain care, because that can be as much of a problem as the wound itself if you're in a lot of pain. Back again to the tooth treatment. If someone's got a rotten tooth and you can't get out and treat it, there's things you can do to get to where you need to get to, and be able to at least be a conscious thinking person who's not blinded by pain. I've had a bad tooth before, and it feels like a red hot poker in your jaw, and so it can be really difficult. But we'll talk about some of those things, and as I go down, I'll think about more. So those are just kind of things we're concentrating on short-term treatments of conditions that we can actually have an effect on in between now and when we can get to hopefully some kind of medical treatment, or maybe hopefully you don't need to because you took care of it well to begin with. And that's really important. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is, say someone had an injury, a wound. Maybe you're out hiking and you're camping out and someone was using an axe to chop up some wood and they hit their foot and now you've got a big gash. Or a car accident happens, which is, people would be, aren't you scared to travel around Africa? Maybe you'll get eaten by a lion. And I was like, well, if I get eaten by a lion, that's a pretty legendary way to go. And we all got to go somehow, and that's pretty cool. You'll never forget that story. But it's actually a lot more likely I'm going to get in a car accident, because that's how most pale, affluent travelers around southern Africa die, statistically speaking, is in a car accident. And so I've been in near-miss situations. I've nearly died a couple of times, but luckily through the skin of my grace, I guess, with my teeth, I didn't. But I have encountered such situations and had been in a first responder kind of situation. And so this falls back to training. The first thing you want to definitely know how to do is treat for shock. Now, if you don't know what shock is, it's a biophysical response that your body goes through when you're in a traumatic situation. And there's kind of two types of shock. There's the kind of shock that you get from losing blood, and your body starts closing off the ways that it can and protecting your organs and your brain, and that is literally from the quantity of blood you lose. So again, that chain, maybe you hit your leg with a chainsaw. That's a very common, the most common chainsaw injury. I have a forestry degree as well. They don't call me Bush Ninja for nothing, I like to say. Is actually the top of the leg, because people are having a chainsaw and they step and they hit the top of their leg. And so PPE, protective equipment like chaps, is good for that, but now you've hit your leg and you've got this big ripped open gash. And so you need, that person will surely go into shock, and you need to know how to treat for shock. Treating for shock, this isn't a first aid course, but raise the feet, get blood towards the head. One of the best things you want to have is an emergency blanket. This thing can save lives, because exposure and hypothermia will kill you. This can even be used to protect against heat, because it's a foily thing. Really great, very light thing, definitely worth keeping in your first aid kit. Some kind of emergency blanket costs next to nothing. You can get them at Walmart or wherever you shop. These are worth carrying, even as an emergency survival shelter. When we're treating for shock, so there's the blood loss one, but then there's an emotional loss. It's like you're in a car accident, you're okay, but there is this dissonance in your psyche that, holy moly, I just nearly died, but I didn't, and I don't have a great injury. That person can still go into shock. Or you can have any kind of traumatic thing happen to you in your life that doesn't even affect you physically, and it can still cause someone to go into shock. And that's an easier to treat thing with things in our first aid kit. And it's generally assumed that if you have any kind of grievous injury, or people who are around somebody who has this injury or go through this experience together, they get upset and they need to be calmed and relaxed, and to help to relax. So there are a whole category of plants called nervines, and the nervines are things that help with nerve-related stress, pain, and they can be generally relaxing. One of my very favorites is passion flower, the tincture. Now tinctures, I don't care, even though I have got a bunch of herbs that I would carry around, but you have to produce tea and water and make a treatment out of that. And also they're pretty voluminous. They take up a lot of volume, which is why I use a compression sack when I would carry my herbs around. Compression sack is a really good tool to keep, as a traveling herbalist. They're waterproof, and you can squish them down. And the herbs don't really mind being squished down. And if you're traveling with a backpack, I could get a lot more plant matter, but the volume is a concern. But otherwise, you're going to travel with tinctures. Now, one of my great teachers and one of the most respected herbalists out there, and if you really want to learn and go deep and study, is a man named Seven Song, and he's one of the most respected herbalists in the Northeast. And Seven Song, I took his herbal first aid kit class one time, and he talks about these tincture bottles, and he actually talked about the weight and the breakability of glass. And he's like, well, it's inherently heavy and it can break. So the world we live in nowadays, in terms of just choosing the things you're exposed to in life, he didn't mind using plastic. And I also agree with that logic. I'm like, well, I live in a plastic world. It's going to get in my body. I'm reluctant, but that's true. And so it can be nice to use plastic bottles for your medicine tinctures in your traveler's first aid kit, because you'll reduce on weight and they won't break. So that is a consideration for you to make. The leaching from plastics, to me, is minimal in terms of my concern versus the benefit I get from being able to carry more medicine, and so I can treat more things. And so you're treating for shock. You've got your nervines; those can really help just calm. You can use aromatherapy in this way pretty effectively. A bottle of lavender essential oil. I'm not super duper into essential oils. I don't discount them. I think they're extremely effective and potent, and to the point that they need a grander education component around them. But the lavender, if someone's freaking out and going through shock and stressing out, it's both the capabilities and the medicine of the lavender, but it's also the slow down and take deep breaths, whether or not there was lavender. So you put a little bit in their hands, and you just have them breathe slowly and relax them. And then, of course, the lavender does have relaxing effects that are documented, and it's got other uses too. So it's a good one. If I was going to carry an essential oil in my first aid kit, lavender's a good one to carry. And then the thing, so when that child had been hit by that car in Mozambique, another thing I had carried with me for a very long time, but I didn't get to use too often, pretty much only at festivals when people were out of their sorts, and with children. There was something that I carried in my first aid kit, and I learned this tip, and I really resonated with it. So I'd have my first aid kit, and I'm just getting there, and it's a scary situation, and there's gloves, there's blood, and I pull out this little guy. And I'll tell you, having a cute little toy, a soft, durable thing, is actually a really nice thing to have in a first aid kit, especially if you're around kids or people who are on psychedelics or anything like that, because this can be the thing that breaks them out of their, holy crap cycle, and you get a laugh. And if you can make someone laugh, even in a crazy, stressful situation, like my little Lorax, my friend made him for me because I love the Lorax, it has medicine in him. And so a tiny little plush doll of some kind, especially if a child is either injured themselves or maybe mom or dad is injured and they need something, you can just hand it to him, and I just tell him, just give it all to him. Give him all the pain, give him all your fear. He can take it, he'll take it from you, and you can, and that, I've used it rarely, but it works. And that's a neat thing that you're not going to find in a first aid kit. So that's all for treating for shock, and that's really important with almost any kind of condition that we're treating. Now, specifically, let's move on to wounds. Now, if someone has an injury, it doesn't have to be a chainsaw to the leg. I mean, that you definitely want to go to the emergency room as soon as you can get there, and we're going to stopgap as best we can, blood loss and things like that. But say you have even just a small cut, and that's much more common. And I meet a lot of my lovely, dirty hippie friends stomping around barefoot in the forest, and we kick a stick, and I tell them, I know you're not going to go to the medic and get that cleaned. You're going to choose to just deal with it, potentially with infection and suffer. But you don't have to if you have your little kit nearby, and you don't have to go to the medics to do a little cut on your foot. But the thing is how do you treat that kind of wound? Well, the first thing you're going to do is clean it. Obviously, you want to clean it out. Anything that's stuck in there is going to lead to infection, and if you have bits of things in there, whether it's soil or wood, if you kicked a stick and it stuck a splinter into you, you got to get that stuff out, because your body is not going to want it inside of it. So in my kit, I have the ability to clean wounds, and that can be like a little spritzer bottle with soapy water, which I'll often do. I think I took it out. I prepare that when I go to an event. Like, I had a little squirty bottle, and I don't just keep it in my first aid kit when it's living at my house and I don't generally need it. But if I'm going into a thing that I know I might be the camp medic, which I've often been the camp medic, I'll have a little squirty bottle of just soapy water, so then you don't have to make soapy water, and it's clean inside the bottle. You're not like washing in a bowl of soapy water that now the whole bowl is, dirty because you're washing it, which is fine for one time when you're washing a wound out, but, this is a neat reusable thing. So, just a little bottle of soapy water, and then you can use it to wash your hands. It could be multifunction. You definitely want to stack functions, so you have it in your food kitchen area. And people can wash their hands regularly, because now we're all washing our hands a lot more, which is great. General personal hygiene has increased, and that's going to just help prevent infection. Also, you want to have quality bandages and gauze and dressing so that you can treat and cover a wound. Now, one of the silliest things that I hear and that I've witnessed is people talking about, oh, I've got this wound, and I'm gonna let it breathe, and I'm going to let it expose it to the air and just hang out and I'll tell you the real story. So I met these surfers, and it was another time actually in Mozambique. So people were surfing, and, the guy had wiped out, and he'd gotten a good scratch on his leg, and it was, it wasn't a really bad scratch, but the ocean is not super clean. It is filled with bacteria. People are like, oh, salt water, it's good for wounds, so I should go be in the ocean. I'm like, yeah, salt water is kind of good for washing wounds, but ocean water is filled with, who knows what, depending on if you're near a city, it might even have sewage and effluent in it. And then even if the ocean itself is in a pretty good clean state, if you're in a wild patch of land and it's just natural, the wave action from the waves kicks up all this bacteria into the air. So even the air at the beach is actually filled with a lot of bacteria. If you look at studies of people who have cultured airborne bacteria, you'll see that like the beach is quite a place where a lot of those bacteria can occur. And so I met this surfer guy, and he's like got his foot up on the thing, and he's got this wound, and it's all red and inflamed, and I've learned from my training the signs of infection. I'm like, dude, that's infected. He's like, yeah, well, I'm just letting it air out a little bit. I was like, well, you really ought to just clean it, put some medicine on it, and cover it and protect it so that it can heal nicely. So wound treatment strategies and learning about how to properly treat a wound so you can not have these kind of like wives' tales of how that works. Now, say you've got that scratch. Now I'm going to move on to my two favorite things. In fact, they're the most used things in my entire kit. And I often carry a lot of things that I don't need often because when I need them and they're very specific for what I need them for. But there are things that I carry that I use all the time. And so much so that it's really become my business and passion to talk about these things. And those two things, the first one is bee propolis. So this is a jar of an extraction of bee propolis that I make, and I've got a video about how to make it, and I'll tell you, bee propolis, if I had one medicine to tell the whole world about, it would be bee propolis. I proselytize for propolis. I cannot tell enough people about the benefit of this medicine. And it is something the bees make, and so bees make honey, and they make wax, and they make something called royal jelly that they feed to the queen, and they make propolis. Propolis means the entrance to the city, or pro to be good for the community. Polis is the same root as metropolis. And so the bees make a little doormat out of this as they enter the hive, and they seal, it's like spackle, they seal all the cracks and the holes in the hive when they make it. It's made out of resins from the trees, so I like to call it tree blood and bee magic. And so you take this tree blood and bee magic and you dissolve it in alcohol, and it's this resin that's super antimicrobial, antibacterial, anti-infective, antifungal, and it's incredible. And it's what it does is the alcohol evaporates when you use it and you apply it externally, and it deposits the resin. You can actually see it all over the jar. The reason the jar is all cloudy up here is that just because the propolis is, the alcohol is evaporated and the propolis deposits. So I make it in that big jar, but then I put it in a little jar like this. And then this is how a lot of people meet me. And if any of my friends are watching, they might have met me this way. I have this propolis, and it's beautiful when you see it in the dropper like that. And for wounds, and I'm going to elaborate on how to do for wounds, but it's also really great for the throat and for teeth. This will kill an infection on site in the most incredible way. I don't hardly get infected wounds anymore, and I'm one of those hippies stomping around in the forest getting cuts in my feet. So I tell my friends, okay, look, even if you're not going to go wash out your wound, carry this in your pocket. When I wear my travel, I have my belt of pouches, my Bush Ninja utility belt, and this has got its own very own pocket. And I'll be like, all right, well, just at least drop it on there. The alcohol is going to sterilize it. The propolis is going to seal it up and keep it from getting infected, or at least significantly combat any infection that's going to happen. And so, but a lot of times when I meet somebody, especially at a party, they're all, and there's actually, it's my favorite Afrikaans word, which is a language from South Africa, and the word is gerukt. Gerukt means to be smoked. Rook, like the bird or the piece in the chest, is smoke, and gerukt means to be smoked. And that means that your throat's all fucked up from smoking too much at a party. And what you can do is, it's just the treatment for propolis is by the drop. So a bottle like this, a 1 ounce bottle or a half ounce bottle, will last for a very long time. And you just drop it in the back of their throat. And a lot of people, oh God, I love it. It tastes so good. It's so good for you. It's super antiviral and anti-cancer and immune boosting, and it's like, this is medicine to get in your body as much as it's medicine to put on the outside of your body. If I had, like I said, one thing to tell the world about, it would be bee propolis. So if you have a cut or a wound, you just apply it by the drop. And the neat thing about it is, because of capillary action, it'll actually run. Say, like, I bite my fingernails, honestly, I'm not going to lie to you. I do that, I bite my nails, and sometimes I bite them too short, and I get cut to the quick, as it were, and I have a damaged cuticle or something. I can put a drop of propolis in there, and it'll run all the way around between my nail and the nail bed and everything else. If you have gingivitis or an ulcer or a sore, if you bite your tongue or you bite your lip, the doctor doesn't have something you can put in your mouth like this. If you have even a cut in your mouth, they don't have anything that you can stick inside your mouth that will stay there. This is because it's a resin, it's not water soluble, it sticks around in your mouth and will linger there. You can feel it. I can still feel it in the back of my mouth, but it coats. It's anti-inflammatory, which is a huge property in terms of reducing even strep throat. It's even indicated for strep throat and other things like that. That you apply it and it'll stick. And this is what you put on a rotten tooth. And I've had at work, that we were on our way to the emergency room. In fact, I was in Botswana, and we were crossing into Zambia, and we were on a mission to deliver a vehicle. So we'd gotten this vehicle, and we were an FJ Cruiser that we had gotten in South Africa for the company, and we were driving it up through Botswana into Zambia. And the guy I was traveling with, the night before, we'd had like steaks, and he must have gotten a piece of bone stuck in his tooth, or who knows, but he woke up in the middle of the night and his face was on fire with an infection. And I was like, okay. And he's like, dude, it's that blinding pain. And he's like, we can't cross the country, we can't go across the border right now. I got to do something about it. So I was like, okay, great. So not great, but we're going to deal with it. You just do what you got to do in life. So I was like, here, put this on your tooth. Let's go find out where the emergency room is. So I put it on him. We go, we talk to the owner of the place we were staying. We get the directions to the emergency room. We start packing up camp so that we can get there. And by the time we were ready to go, he's like, my tooth doesn't hurt anymore. It didn't hurt at all. And it didn't hurt again the entire rest of that little trip. It stopped the infection in its tracks, and we were able to get on with our day with no problem, within about half an hour. The other neat thing is that because of that capillary action, it'll run along the gum line. And so I do whole oral treatments for people who have infections in their mouth that I can apply this. And it gets brown stuff on your teeth because it's a resin, but other than a cosmetic issue, it's super good for you, and it really, really works for any kind of inflamed infection. Now, what internet video would this be if I didn't have an unboxing? So propolis is really hard to get. And so I have a beekeeper friend in West Virginia, and he just sent me a package, and I hadn't even opened it yet. So this is West Virginia bee propolis that I'm opening up live in front of you from High Bush Farms in Hedgesville, West Virginia. Now, the neat thing about propolis, there it is that it's because it's a resin, it's a geographic product. It's a bee product that, just like honey, the bees are selecting from plants all around them in nature. And so every propolis is different, and this one's got this beautiful red color, and it's just really clean. Now, the thing is that bees and beekeepers have to, when they check the hive, we're not taking anything from the bees in this way. People get concerned about bees, and every beekeeper I've ever met loves their bees. And whenever they check the hive, they have this little hive tool that they have to scrape the lid of the hive, and they collect that. What they're scraping is the propolis that the bees use to seal the hive, to seal up that crack between the lid and the box that it's in. And so they have to scrape it, and they collect it all. And then that's kind of what this is. And they don't have to do any extra energy on the beekeeper's part, but they don't have an economy around this stuff, so most beekeepers don't keep it and don't collect it. And that's unfortunate because it's the most useful medicine that I've ever encountered. And so if I have a wound, say I have an infection on my foot, and I think I see my friend Chandra is watching, and she knows what I'm talking about. She's had infected wounds before, and we've treated them with propolis, and what you do, say it's like on your leg, you've got a wound, you want to make it, horizontal, and then drop the propolis on 1 drop at a time. This is for fresh wounds that are still like open and still wet and still, but not bleeding. We got to stop the bleeding first. That's the first thing you do. Stop the bleeding, clean the wound. Now we're treating with propolis, and it'll sting like a bee, but it only hurts until the pain goes away. That's what I like to say. And then people laugh, and then I drop it. Get that laugh in there. And then they're like, oh, it's only going to hurt until the pain goes away. Great. And so the alcohol is what stings, and you want that. I like it because it tells me, oh, it's getting into where it needs to get to. If you apply propolis after a wound is already sealed, it's still okay. You're just essentially putting like an antimicrobial scab on top, but you are not getting it into the metabolic exchange that occurs in the wound, where it's actually going to help fight the infection and nourish your tissue and boost your immune system just from having the internal access to your body. That's why eating it is also so good for you. It's going to boost your system. So propolis, that is the number 1 thing in my herbal first aid kit. Literally, so I keep it in my belt. I don't even have it in the kit, which is maybe in my backpack. I've got it like in my belt. Because if I get any kind of wound, small cuts and scratches that aren't gushing blood, any kind of throat stuff, when I meet somebody, like, hey, and I've even gotten it on tape. It's like, and they're like, I've got no voice, I'm totally gone. I'm like, oh, I've got something that can help you. The bees make it, it might help you. So I've even once or twice gotten it on tape where they're like, hi, my name is whoever I am, and I've got no voice. And then I'm like, oh, and then they say it again, hi, holy moly, I can talk. I say 7 to 70%. It's not going to cure your voice, but vocalists, if you're a singer, people who have, to talk a lot, speakers, they really resonate with using propolis. And then the next thing that is what I like to call my finest craft is salve. Now salve is a creation that is ancient. This was the original medicine for human skin, and it's kind of my specialty. I make very complex and divine topical application medicines. This is for after the wound's closed, after, it's post-propolis, it's now in a healing stage. We can take, what salve is a balm or a cream that you can take, and it is oils that are infused with plants that have medicinal properties, and then thickened with beeswax. So all of those ingredients together combine, and it's really nourishment for human flesh. I like to actually call it flesh fertilizer. That's not like a marketing term I'll ever use, but it is kind of like that, in so much that it feeds and nourishes the tissue. A lot of folks just use it on their lips mostly, and this will really, it'll absorb in and it'll nourish your lips to be soft, and you won't get dry, cracked lips. But also for burns, cuts, scratches, because of the different herbs that I put in, and because of the nourishing capabilities of the oils themselves, and because of the protective properties of the beeswax, those all synergize together into making something that can be really good for your skin. So here's an example of a product I make, and it's my Bush Ninja Super Salve, and it's got a large plethora of herbs and plants and oils in it, some of which you may have heard of. Argan oil, baobab oil, cocoa butter, shea butter, grapeseed oil. Those are all oils that I put in, and I mix and I infuse and extract actual whole plants, like herbs in a jar, with these oils. Things like comfrey, which is an incredible wound healing plant. If I'm gonna, I do have some comfrey in my bag. One of its common names is knit bone, and because of how powerful it is for wounds to heal. And so I have this wound, and now it's healing. Maybe I fell off a bicycle, you're a kid, and you got that road rash, or you were on a big kid, and you're on a motorcycle, and you fell off and you got road rash. The doctor doesn't have anything. He's got antibiotic cream, Neosporin type stuff, but not something that's going to nourish the wounds to heal more quickly, without infection, with reduced scarring, and those are all properties of different plants that I put in here. Bug bites and stings, it's got plantain, which is the ground herb, not the red banana. It's got gotu kola, which is going to help with collagen formation in the skin, so preventing scar tissue formation and as a beauty aspect for wrinkles. And so this is something that you guys can find if anybody's interested. You can find it on my Facebook webpage, which is Bush Ninja Botanicals, and then it's on a shop right there, and it's just the current artisan batch, because each batch is unique as I make them, and they're also geographic and seasonal, because if it's wintertime, I make it differently than if it's summertime kind of thing. So if I had to have just two things with me, and the things I carry with me much of the time, because most of the first aid situations I'm treating are kind of wounds, cuts, scratches, injuries, burns, some kind of a wound, propolis and salve are the two things that I carry with me. If you just had a belt that you're carrying around, those are things that you're not even, your super minimalist kit. But I would definitely include them. Now, the next thing that we're going to treat is pain. So maybe you don't have an external wound. Those two things, that's really for external wounds. But maybe you got a bruise and it's internal, and maybe you have this contusion and it's bleeding. You can certainly still apply salves to that, because it'll get in through your skin. But even sprains and breaks and things like that, strains. It's hard to apply something topically. I like to attack a thing from both sides. So if I have something topical, I can apply. Now, for example, this is a salve that I make that is very strongly infused with cannabis, CBD, and it can be used for pain. And I have a whole pain and inflammation salve and muscle type stuff too. And these sticks are really nice because you can apply it, like this, without having to dip your finger into a pot and spread it. So cannabis is obviously one of the biggest indicated plants for pain. And especially when you use it topically, there's no potential for any kind of intoxication. So you can work with cannabis medicine, be it full spectrum with THC or just CBD, and anybody who has any concern around, that, they don't have to have that concern for topical application for body pain. If they are in pain and they want to ingest it, even CBD or just a straight cannabis tincture or oil, full spectrum, can really help the body with pain. If they don't want to use cannabinoids, that's totally great and absolutely respectable. So there are other things that I can use for pain. Now, there's a plant called ghost pipe, and ghost pipe is a pain dissociative. And so it helps you just like disconnect from the pain. It's almost like using the shock response on purpose so that they can disassociate from the pain that's affecting them, and it helps the body in this way. So I have a ghost pipe tincture. Another one that I have is pedicularis. Pedicularis canadensis is a powerful skeletal muscle relaxant, and so by using this is if you strain, even just you got a sore neck, or if someone's in pain and it's skeletal muscle related, this can help to relax their muscles without being like a pill of a muscle relaxant. And so you don't have the contraindications around working with that pill. So other things for pain. Oh, now, like I said, holistic medicine person, I carry non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, ibuprofen, aspirin. Those are effective medicines. I think my phone is slowly drifting. Let me just turn this down. There we go. Okay. So I do have aspirin. I'm not going to say don't use aspirin or ibuprofen. Now, you may know that aspirin was originally derived from willow trees. And so willow bark has this salicylic acid in it that has been used since the dawn of time, since the dawn of humans keeping record of time, for pain, to break a fever, for all of these things. And then only relatively recently, less than 100 years ago, scientists were able to isolate the salicylic acid. They were able to add this acetyl group to it, which both made it a synthesized molecule they could patent and make money on, as well as made it supposedly a little less irritating to the digestive lining. That was invented by a company called Bayer, and that was the dawn of the pharmaceutical age. Oh, shoot. Sorry about that. I guess the spring-loaded is maybe not the best. Thank y'all for watching. I see I've got 4 lovely people here. I'm grateful for y'all to be here with me as I deal with my small technical issue. There we go. It looks okay. All right. Hopefully we don't lose that again, but we'll deal. Okay, so there's no reason not to have those things I have them, and I take them when I need them. Just though, pain is to your body. It's important to know what you're in pain from, and to treat that in a better way than just to mask pain. But there are ways to deal with it. So let's see, I've got those. Now I made a pretty complicated blend. I feel like this thing's gonna pop again. I made a pretty complex blend for my dad, who was having some really intense bone-on-bone arthritis in his hip. And I went to different classes. I went to the Florida Herbalism Conference. I went to the Earth Skills Gathering, and I made this blend for my dad that was a whole bunch of things that were joint lubricating and that were anti-inflammatory and nervine, and I have that preparation available, which has really been fantastic and effective. Okay, so that's dealing with pain, because that can really help. Other things that I include in my first aid kit that there aren't spectacular herbal analogies are antihistamines. Definitely have like a Benadryl in your kit, because if someone's having an allergic reaction and you're dealing with anaphylaxis, then you want a pill for that. And there are herbal antihistamines that can help you deal with like seasonal allergies and things like that. But if someone gets stung by a bee and they're allergic to bees and they don't have their EpiPen, like, these are a good example of maybe, have the herbal antihistamines, but certainly also have a Benadryl type option for someone who's having an allergic reaction. Also, eyes, you get something in your eye. So I carry these single-use eye droppers that can just help with irritation. But there's a really great trick. If you just have a normal plastic water bottle, the mouth of the water bottle is just the right shape to put over your eye. And you tell the person, I want you to imagine there's a target on the bottom of the bottle. I wish I had a bottle here to show. I would just splash myself with water for y'all, because that would be funny. There's a bullseye on the back of it. You want to look at that bullseye as you put your eyeball to the thing, and then just squeeze and flush. And so everybody's got an eye wash station if they've got a normal plastic water bottle, because that is really effective to get something, to flush something out of the eye. The other thing I have in my first aid kit to flush is a little irrigation syringe. This can be really helpful to debride a wound, to flush it out with your soapy water type stuff. Let's see. So now the next thing I want to talk about is tummy troubles. In my travels, this is something that I'm going to encounter in a first aid situation. Someone ate something funny, or they're just having often that 24-hour tummy bug is a form of food poisoning. You don't get a sickness, a cold for an overnight. That's an affliction that you've accidentally put upon yourself from eating something or touching something and putting it in your mouth, and your digestive system and your immune system are fighting it. So things that can be really helpful, either, you're one of two ways. You're going to either be having diarrhea, or you may be constipated. So there are things that you can carry that can help with those things. Psyllium husks, which is the seed of the plantain plant, also in America called Metamucil, it treats for both because it's very absorptive, but it's also lubricating and mucilaginous. Chia seeds, that more people are familiar with. If you've ever put chia seeds in water, they soak up the water, but then they have this mucilage around them. So even a small thing of chia seeds, just like a little baggie of chia seeds, then you put them in water, and if this person it's nice to treat multiple things. So this can help for both constipation and diarrhea, and it's food. So that's neat. So it's cool to have stacking functions. I do carry like a Tums or an antacid, which is essentially mineral medicine. There's your calcium carbonate. It's chalk, and they put flavorants and stuff in it, but it's really just eating earth. And geophagy, the eating of earth, is a time-honored and ancestral tradition. I would carry forms of limestone with me too sometimes and be like, okay, well, this is some calcium mineralized, and it can help with as an antacid. And then the biggest one that I carry also that everybody should have in their first aid kit is activated charcoal. Now, you can get charcoal, obviously, from a fire pit, but you don't know, hopefully nobody was burning anything with paint or that had been treated, and but it's nice to obviously just go and get some capsules. And it would be really fun actually to have a first aid kit making party, because you don't need this pack of 60 of them. You only need a dozen of them in your kit, and then you replenish them when you use them. So never worry about using a thing. Don't hoard medicine. I made that mistake. You know, I've got things in here, I'm like, oh, it's not a good enough time to use that thing. Just go ahead and use everything and then replace it. It'd rather to use it and then replace it with the new stuff, because then you end up carrying something for years and it doesn't get better over time, that's for sure. So go ahead and just use it. Another one of my favorite things is aloe bitters, the bitter resin of aloe ferox. And this is the resinous crystal of the inside of the aloe. Aloe, if you've got one at your house, is a great first aid plant to have around, because you can use it, as you probably know, for sunburns and any kind of burn. You crack open a leaf and that gel is really good for burns. It's also really good for your digestion. So you can chop it up and put it in a smoothie, and you can ingest it, and it'll help act as a laxative. I've got the little bitter crystals that are dry, and you can take them kind of like a pill. It's like a match head sized piece, and you take that and it'll cause a laxative action, and it'll help if you've been stopped. And I've had people, come up to me at a festival and they hadn't gone to the bathroom in like 2-3 days, maybe because they were not wanting to go to the porta potty and they were holding it back, or maybe they were eating horrible festival food and taking things that blocked them up. But after 3 days, you gotta go. And this has literally saved people's parties, and events, is just having an herbal laxative. And so I definitely always keep that with me. It doesn't take up any space hardly. They're really potent in their size. And so that's a good one. So those are, and so the other thing is, so that's wounds, that's afflictions, and then there's sickness. And there's herbal medicines for sickness. Now here I have, my favorite one is medicinal mushrooms. Medicinal mushrooms are things, it's not even first aid, this is a daily take. You can, and this one is reishi, chaga, lion's mane, turkey tail, shiitake, and maitake mushrooms. I didn't make it, a dear friend, Bill, made it, and every time I talk about the medicine like this, I try to take it, because you can't take too much of these things, and they're really going to help your body's immune system fight off a disease. Now, I want to say something about one of our favorite plants for immune system boosting, echinacea. Echinacea is a great, great plant medicine, but it's specific to a certain use. And a lot of folks will just, it's not a daily take. It's not something that you just take all the time, because your body will kind of adapt to it and it won't have as strong of an action. And so your immune system, it's got two aspects to it. It's your active immune system and your passive immune system. Now the passive immune system is always on. It's always working, helping your body to find pathogens, whether they be bacteria or viruses or parasites, and it's kind of in the background, always trying. And when it finds something and it starts to attack it, it activates the active immune system, which is the production of the antibodies, and white blood cells get alerted to what's going on, and they can come and they can fight it. Now, echinacea boosts the passive immune system. So so that means you should take echinacea with some forethought. Start taking it a day or 2 or 3 before you have an event, if you can, or even just moments before. If I'm going to walk into a hospital, let me take some of this echinacea, because the hospital may have something I'm concerned about that I don't want to catch. I'm going to take an airplane flight or go traveling. Day or 2 before I start traveling, I'm going to start taking echinacea, whether it's in tincture form or in capsules or making tea out of the leaves. All of these are great, but you want to use it the right way. You don't want to just take echinacea all the time. You want to take it before an event where you can then boost your passive immune system. The mushrooms you can take every day, and that's going to also boost you, but in different ways. So the echinacea that's how you use it. Once you get sick, echinacea is not as indicated. If it's the only thing you have, sure, take it. But if there are other better things, plants that contain a compound called berberine are really good for sickness and viral conditions and other things. And the one that everybody knows is golden seal. But or maybe not everybody, but a lot of people know golden seal. But the problem is it's over harvested. and it's not super ethical to use golden seal. So what I like to use instead is a plant called Oregon grapefruit, and they're used interchangeably because, thank goodness, the plants create the same compound, and it gives it this bright yellow color. So that berberine containing plants, those are a good thing to have in your first aid kit. They can really help with ulcers inside the digestive system too, and that is one of the best indications I've seen it used for, and any kind of sickness and infection in the body to help boost the body's metabolic ability to fight it. And the medicinal mushrooms. Oh, another thing that I carry in my first aid kit is an antifungal cream. That is a chemical antifungal cream. I do make antifungal salves, and that's like a specialist salve that I can use. Fungus is very, very difficult. Skin fungus is very difficult to treat because your skin is so many layers deep, many layers, and you know the outside of your skin is all dead. And so people, what they'll do is they'll put on an antifungal medicine, and the outer appearance gets better, it goes away, and they're like, oh, okay, I'm done. But they don't realize that underneath the outside, it's still there. So you have to keep, the thing about treating fungus is it's a long-term treatment. You have to keep treating it for a good month, solid, every day, religious application of the medicine, whether it be a natural antifungal or something that's got chemical antifungals in it, which I will use sometimes just because of, honestly, it's like, if someone's got a really bad condition, like athlete's foot that's causing cracks and things, I might seal the cracks with propolis, but I might just hand them the thing and let them keep it so they can treat it themselves. It doesn't happen to me all that often that I worry about it, but so that's why I'm happy to hand it off if I find someone who's got a really severe condition. So that's a general overview of the things that I have to treat wounds, sicknesses, and afflictions of different sorts. The last thing I want to talk about is the tools that we'll have in our first aid kit and that are really good to have. And I'm not going to pull them all out and show you because you know what these things are. A pair of tweezers. You want to be able to, splinters and little things, or again, with like a road rash situation, and you've got little bits of dirt like ground into your skin, you want to be able to get little things out. And so tweezers are, who here has ever had a splinter or had a child come up to them who's got a splinter? Like, in terms of most used things, tweezers are up there with amongst the most used things. You want a pair of scissors in your first aid kit for a few reasons. One, it's just a lot easier to cut gauze, bandages, and things to shape and size, but sometimes if it's a bad wound, you got to cut people's clothes off. You don't want to try to take their pants off if they've got that chainsaw wound on their leg. Then you're going to be like manipulating them, or they fell and they've got a compound break, which means the bone's sticking out of their leg or something. You just use scissors and cut the clothing off. Maybe you need to create bandages. Maybe you've run out, or there's so much and you need something bigger, and you've got a clean t-shirt. You can cut that into a bandage. A magnifying glass. Again, it's looking for those really small things. If someone steps on a piece of glass, it can be really difficult to see the glass. So a magnifying glass so you can get in close. In the same way, a mirror. So on my first aid kit, I would carry a mirror. I had a little signal mirror that was also a survival tool. But if you just get a little compact and have like a makeup mirror of some kind, you can't see your own backside kind of thing. And so tick checks. Oh, that's another good thing for tweezers. You got ticks. We got Lyme disease. We got Rocky Mountain spotted fever. There's tick bite fever in Africa where I got that one time. And the tick, he got me like right on my taint. And that was why I didn't catch him, because I didn't see him. But if I had been looking, I ended up having to get a mirror to find the wound where I had been infected. And so a mirror is a very good thing to have in the first aid kit. And then also, we talked about gloves already. You want to definitely have gloves, both for obviously your own protection, but that psychological thing of having credibility. Our dogs are barking. The CPR mask, the irrigation syringe, and one thing that you don't ever think about when you're putting your first aid kit together is a headlamp. You need to have a light in your first aid kit, because you're always putting this together and it's light out, and you think, oh, I have my headlamp with me, but it's always good to have an extra light. Sorry about that, I had a phone call, and So yeah, those are most of the tools that I carry in my first aid kit. Oh, I have here also for tooth and mouth infections, bee propolis again. That's the thing I would put on any infected tooth. Also to numb, there's clove oil, which is in South Africa they call tontal dripples, which means tooth drops. And so the clove oil is a numbing agent. A chemical version of that, a pharmaceutical version of that is called Ambisol, where you can put it on ulcers in the mouth and things that are painful, and it'll just numb it at least. But nothing works just as well as propolis, which actually kills the infection and isn't just numbing. And so that is most of what I wanted to say, I think, about having your herbal first aid kit, your traveler's first aid kit. If anybody ever wants to contact me, you can pretty much type Bush Ninja into anything and I'll pop up. My name's Alex Howe. My formal company, Bush Ninja Botanicals on Facebook. I'm the Bush Ninja on Instagram. If you liked this talk, feel free to leave me a tip. I really greatly appreciate it. Venmo, Bush Ninja, Cash App, Bush Ninja, PayPal, Bush Ninja Botanicals @gmail.com. And that's also how you can contact me. If you would like to send me an email, I would love to hear from you, and feel free to leave feedback on this talk. But when you go out, be prepared, be trained, have your kit with you, and stay safe out there, and then you can go out and have all the fun, and it'll be a great day. And, anything happens, then you'll be prepared for it. Thanks for watching. I hope you all have a fantastic day, and we'll keep on going. Thanks, Liza, for putting on this event, and I hope that we all get to tune in throughout the next few weeks of May to watch and to listen to different people presenting their passions. So thanks again for watching. I hope this was helpful. If anybody has any questions, Alex Howe, Bush Ninja on Facebook is my general contact. Also, like I said, Bush Ninja, the Bush Ninja on Instagram. Anybody's welcome to message me anytime, wherever you are in the world. Thanks a lot, and have a beautiful day, folks. Take care.